When it comes to comping, then you have lots of books and online lessons on learning chord voicings and voice leading. But once you want to start turning that into something that really works, then there's really not a lot of advice available. But there is actually a great place to get some inspiration and strategies for developing your comping, which is what I want to show you in this video. Now, probably a lot of you are now thinking that this is about rhythms, and that is sort of true, but it's actually more than that, because there are things in here that can really open up your playing in other ways as well. For this video, I'm going to use a simple 12-bar blues in C as an example, and since this is not about incredibly fancy chord voicings, the most chromatic voice leading tricks, or the hippest extensions, then I'm going to use 2 different melody notes for each chord. Extensions and voicings are nice too, but that's not the focus right now, and I'm pretty sure they're just going to be distractions if we start including that. That's not what you want to focus on, and I think you'll see why. I'm going to assume that you can follow the chords quite easily, so I'm not going to cover that in any kind of detail. And of course, you can look it up on my website if you have any questions about the voicings. There's a link in the description. The chords are kept very minimal, but as you'll see, that's more than enough to make some great music. This is all about 3 types of exercises that can help you get your chords to sound like comping, and maybe even open up how you think about phrasing and rhythm in general. When you're focusing on voicings or voice leading, then it's about either what notes you put together or how you get to the next chord in the song. Now, of course, both of these things are important, but you can also see that when you're focusing on that, then you're zoomed in and it's mostly just about looking 1 bar ahead. And you're almost never playing a song with only 2 bars. There's always a whole form. Now, I don't know about you, but the people in the rhythm section that I usually admire the most tends to be the drummers. That's where the groove and the interaction are both clearly present and where the dynamics of the song are being created. So a part of that is probably also that the musician that I really have to connect with when I'm comping is the drummer. And for a drummer, it's not about voice leading or extensions. So how do they practice? Where most guitar examples are 1 or 2 bar rhythms, then drummers tend to do exercises that are over longer parts of the song. And there they're working off something that's a combination of different patterns. An exercise might look something like this. Just to explain how to read this, very often the entire groove is not written out, so it's assumed that the right cymbal is being played. Here the hi-hat is included, but what you actually want to focus on is the snare drum rhythm. The rest is not important. You essentially want to read it as if it looks like this. And this rhythm you can use as a comping pattern on guitar. I'm going to apply this to the first 4 bars of the blues and then talk about what I think is really important about this approach. The big advantage here is that you're starting to hear the rhythm as a melody and phrases that are not just on a single chord, but are a part of a longer sentence with a repeated part and a conclusion. So phrases that contain smaller building blocks which fit together. Actually, that sounds like something that could be useful for other things than comping. A side note to this is that it makes a lot of sense to work on thinking of bar 4 as the conclusion of the phrase, as the end of the sentence. That's also how our sense of form works. We feel things in groups of 4 or 8 bars, and the more you play like that, the better you feel that, which will later eventually make you a lot stronger and more free in terms of feeling the form. There is an interview with Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter where they talk about how they feel the 12-bar blues as groups of bars together, so that a blues chorus is essentially a 3/4 bar. If you start feeling the form like that, then you get a lot of freedom to do stuff in between, which of course also describes how they often played. Of course, you want to take a 4-bar pattern like this and go through the entire blues form as well, just to really hear it and get some different options for filling it in. But let's move on to how you level this up to get some great comping rhythms going. The method and exercises that I'm showing you here was not how I learned to comp, but I sort of wish that it was, because I'm pretty sure that would have been a lot easier. And I have seen this work really well for my students. The way that I was taught was by being around great drummers and having the good fortune to be told about how comping worked and when interaction worked between drums and guitar or drums and piano, and also, very honestly, when it didn't work.
Not quite my tempo.
What I'll be showing you here will help you listen to yourself to play something that makes sense and sort of tells a story, but it's also going to help you play natural phrases that a drummer can work with so that you can connect and start shaping the music together. To develop your vocabulary with rhythms, then you can of course start checking out jazz drumming lessons on comping to find more patterns like this one. That's a great thing to do, and please leave a comment if you have some good resources like books or online lessons. But you can also start creating your own by taking the rhythms that you already know or listening to drummers that are great at playing like this, think of Philly Joe Jones or Jimmy Cobb, and take phrases from them to combine with what you already know. The important thing is that you take a step back and worry less about extensions moving from 9 to flat 13, and instead try to play some strong melodic rhythms, some phrases that last 4 or 8 bars and make sense. And often listening to big band can actually be really useful for this, because you have the right type of simple melodies and rhythms that really work and sound great. If you start with the previous example, but then change it up a bit, then you can get something like this for the next 4 bars of the blues, with the same format of a repeating figure and then a phrase to end it. But you can also introduce more variation, for example, by going back to the original motif and now also change or develop some of the repeats. And what you are actually developing while you're working on this is your ability to hear those rhythms, but also to hear how they fit together and what you can create with them. Another thing that this can really open up is your soloing. Try to record one of your solos, listen to it and ask yourself, how often do I have phrases that are 4 bars long with a beginning, a middle and an end? Maybe taking some time to think like this and trying to incorporate that into my playing could be useful. In fact, maybe there's a video in that as well. The king of this is Wes. If you listen to him and how Wes improvises, then you can certainly hear repeating patterns and motivic development. So check this out. Essentially, he has sort of a call-response structure. So you get a call that's... and then a response that's this. And then once the chords start moving a bit more, then he develops that a bit to sort of get it to fit in there. Sounds like this. Very often when I do a video on comping like this one, then I'll get a comment that tells me that no, comping is about interaction. You can't practice that without a band. Now, in my experience, that is pretty far from true. And the next exercise is actually about interacting, even when you're practicing by yourself. Now, besides that, then I think there are so many skills involved with comping that you have plenty to work on, even without interacting with a soloist and the rhythm section. Simply because you need to play the chords, keep time, make sure that you make sense, that you're using the right colors. And the easier that is, the more freedom you'll have, and that will make it easier to listen to what is going on around you so that you can interact. You also don't only practice soloing with a band, and there you have to interact as well. At least I hope you do.
Are you upset? No. No, so you just don't give a shit about any of this?
Until now, it's been about written exercises and composing, but you can also start to incorporate improvisation so that you're working on hearing the rhythms in real time and get it all to fit together while you're creating these larger phrases. And this exercise is in fact also incredibly powerful for solos, but I'm going to show you that in a bit. An easy way to do that is to start with the layout from the written exercise, and in fact that's also about interacting, because you play the written part and then treat that as a call, which you then improvise a response to, and in that way create the entire phrase. A chart using the first 1-bar rhythm would look like this. And with that, you can pick a comfortable tempo and then start to fill in the empty bars and see what you come up with. You listen and then you play what fits with that. If you get stuck, then you can of course also just stop the time and try to explore it out of time. As I said, then this is also a very useful exercise if you're working on getting your solo phrases to go from just licks next to each other and become more of a coherent story, something with a beginning, a middle, and an end. A simple version of that could be something like this, where I repeat the first phrase and then develop material that's a response. And I amazing place to study these techniques in action and to hear how they can really work well is to check out the solos of Wes Montgomery. If you check out this video where I discuss the way that he's using melody and rhythm, which is incredibly strong while also keeping it kind of simple. And you'll hear examples of chord response, motivic development, and actually also big band riffs in his solos. You don't want to miss that.